this up, which there's always a constant battle between perception and impact. I am a very kind, soft-spoken person, but then early on, people used to tell me, that's a great idea. You weren't able to drive it because you are just so nice. And for the longest time, I thought I'm not supposed to be nice if I have to be a leader. I have to have this demeanor of being very mean and critical and all of that. And that added more stress on me rather than me being myself and doing my best. And then came the wave of emotional intelligence, and people were like, oh my gosh, you have it, you have that. And that's a superpower. So I think that's been very unique to my experience, which is there's a perception of what a leader looks like, what a woman in product looks like. And we should break that perception and be genuine, be yourself, because there isn't a mold that you're trying to fit into. And that's really worked for me because at times I'm really stringent and strict and, uh, ask the hard questions with a serious face. But at times I'm really empathetic and kind and approachable. And I feel like both those sides of me are respected as a leader. So that would be like my experience that I'd love to share with this group.
Thing. And I've gotten a lot of feedback that I'm too assertive as a woman, so can't win. Akshay, I would love to hear from you.
Oh my God, Sue, what an opener. Anyway, everyone, very nice to meet you. My name is Akshaya. I was ex-chief product officer at a venture studio, and I just recently moved from Canada back to the Bay Area. I also have a background in engineering, so I used to be a developer, and someone told me that I was too curious and too extroverted and social to be a developer for the rest of my life. So that's how I chanced into product management. Basically, I just loved connecting with people day in and day out, and my curiosity just fueled me. So I'm going to jump right into the question, and I just think it's an opportunity. Being a woman, specifically in product or in any unique craft or discipline, I think just kind of you just have this natural empathy, and nothing can trump great empathy for your customers. Nothing can trump great empathy for the teams that you work with, and I feel like it just can really take you to that next level. So what the opportunity it gave me was to like not use that as a weakness, like, oh, you're just too curious, or you're too empathetic to understand what's going on with your customers and so on. But I was able to find that magic moment and make it super valuable, both for the business, the products that I built, as well as showing the teams that built them with me that level of empathy. So I think in this world more than ever before, having that knack to just like go after the thing that matters the most, I think it's a superpower. So harness it. Like don't back down from it.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. Sandy, I'd love to please introduce yourself.
Well, hello, everyone. And lovely introduction, Sue and Akshay. I don't know how I follow that. But I'm Sandy Wong. I'm based in the Bay Area. I've been in product management for quite some time now in consumer marketplace and B2B to C companies. I was most recently VP of product at GoodRx, and prior to that, head of product at Amazon, working on AI visual shopping. I'm currently focused on advising startups and coaching product leaders on their careers and landing a job in this challenging job market. So I'm super excited for today's discussion. Unlike Sue and Akshaya, I actually don't have a technical background. I came from liberal arts. I came from that. And when I first joined product management, I thought, wow, that's actually detrimental. A lot of the job recs, like years ago, that was required. Not so much anymore, but I've really leaned into that. And that's become my superpower from the liberal arts. In terms of the question, my unique experiences, I mean, I share very similar things with Sue, Akshaya, and probably those of you on the call. I've been told I've been too assertive at one point and also too nice at one point. So I've had both. I started on the too nice front. And I think leveraging the peers is really understanding, and this is years ago, understanding what the perception of women are and some of the unconscious biases. Because quite frankly, I want to say the first several years of my job, I was working with a lot of men, and they didn't even occur in my head. Like I was just doing my job and I didn't even think about any unconscious biases. It wasn't until I talked to other peers and they made me aware of it. I was like, oh, I have to, think about those things for myself. For example, women don't advocate themselves for promotions as much, or they don't go for a job as frequently as their male counterparts unless they feel 100% that they're qualified, right? And having that power of that information for me, I was able to assess for myself, oh, actually, am I not going for that role because I feel like, I'm only 70% there, right? And so I can have the mentality of like, screw it, like 70% there, that's pretty good. I'm gonna do it. Like if my male counterparts are doing it, like why shouldn't I do that as well? So I think it's the awareness, it's the exchange of information and ideas and calibrating with peers that is just so super powerful, because unconscious bias creeps in everywhere. Like it's a normal part of human behavior. That's how we make these snap decisions. It's really what we do with it that is like, once you're aware of it, what you can do with it. And as a manager, seeing that on my teams and saying, okay, there's 20 people in here. This woman just like can't get a word in, and I'm gonna ask her what her thoughts are on something. So like Akshaya, I do think it is a superpower to kind of lean into, particularly what I've seen on the empathy side, and that's empathy for the customers, but also empathy for your team to be a better leader and a stronger leader. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you so much for sharing. Well, I've been in Silicon Valley for 25 years. I feel like I've had the benefit of being surrounded by amazing women throughout my career. So Deb Liu has always been a role model and a peer mentor, peer and mentor to me. So she and I worked on the eBay PayPal integration together. I've also had amazing bosses who are women, Shreya Mahesh and Anne Raimondi and just Jessica Heron, and so many women who've like inspired me and led the way and helped me sort of build confidence and sort of share that I could go for that role, even though I was only 70% ready. Okay, but I want to shift the question to so we already know about the power of like having awesome managers and sponsors, but what about peers? So I do believe in my heart that like peer support is just as critical. And so Sandy, you were talking about this a little bit, but I would love for Akshaya and Sue to share some time and very specifically any advice, feedback, or accountability from your peers that have made a significant impact on a work decision or a leadership challenge that you faced. So maybe Akshaya, can we have you start?
Yes, I can definitely kick off with this. So I'll tell you a little bit, I'll tell you a story because I think that'll just kind of make it all very valuable. So I have been in product leadership pretty much my entire career, except the last role that I did, which was basically at a venture studio. And I was playing this product leader, but I also had like general manager type responsibilities. So I had to think more cross-functional leadership. Now, in the past, I was doing like R&D was like my strength, right? Like I always knew understood how design teams work, go to market, product, engineering, I got that. But there was all of this more critical go to market functions that I didn't quite have good expertise in because I'd just never done that before. So for example, thinking about talent strategy, thinking about setting up your first sales team, thinking about how do you really lean into partnership setup and deal negotiations and so on. So one of the ways that I think the peers helped me, and mainly because I had a diverse set of peers, they had expertise in all of these other areas. So I was able to really lean into that, work through challenges, which is like, hey, I really need to set up my first sales team, think about the first sales commission structure that makes sense when I'm trying to build a net new company ground up, right? And so being able to triangulate levels of expertise from my peers was so valuable, and it took like years of experience collapsed into like an hour sometimes. And so that I think is irreplaceable, but the magic there is surrounding yourself with diversity in that peer group. And usually I mean, I know there's, you always can lean into the peers in your own organization, but when your organization is that small, where do you go for peers? And so I think just unlocking that has been so valuable for me, specifically in that. And I was able to build a couple great businesses as an outcome of that. So yeah, that's my story. Lean into it if you get an opportunity. Do not say no.
That is incredible. Thank you for sharing. That's, oh my gosh. Sue, tell me a little bit about your sort of journey, and then also like the power of peers in terms of helping you sort of, whether it's advice, feedback, accountability, growth.
Yeah, absolutely. Akshaya, that was such a beautiful story. And one that I can relate to, and I'm sure a lot of us can. So for me, it was the realization that so when you start off in a product role or any role, right, you want to climb that corporate ladder, be more impactful, take on more. And then you get to a point where you realize that people aren't giving you candid feedback anymore because there is this dynamic that is a little uncomfortable for them to tell you that wasn't cool or this didn't work. And so I know you guys have heard this term where it gets lonely at the top. And I think it's really true. And it's not just about making decisions that apply to your job, but it's also you as a person, as a leader, you want to keep growing because there's no end to wanting to grow, right? So my peer group, similar to what Akshaya said, was a diverse group. And when I found them, the first thing I felt was I felt seen. There were so many things in my head that was, am I supposed to be having these questions in my head? I don't know the answers to everything. What they did for me is one, they offered undying support. Like I could call them up anytime and talk to them. And that really meant a lot. And they helped me feel seen and normalize some of the feelings I was having. Because when you become a leader, there's this perception, especially as a person of color, and an immigrant to this country, I always wanted to be like, okay, you know what? I got this. I can't ask them. There might be some cultural nuances, so I can't ask them. I come across as not being informed, right? They normalized it for me. And that felt so good. I felt like, yes, everybody goes through these emotions, and it's okay to feel be a vulnerable leader and say, I don't know this. And so I think the peer group really bought that for me. And thanks to you, you reached out to me and I was like, oh, really? Like, is this a thing? And then once I got into it and met these wonderful people, it truly changed me, I think, as a person and as a leader. So if I have to share something, it is that if you're feeling underconfident or unsure, just know that all of us are at some point in time. So build a peer group that normalizes that for you and then equips you with their own experiences to get over it. So you don't have to experience everything to be better at it. Like this collective experience, just like collective wisdom. I think that's what the peer group did for me. And I'm so, so thankful for it.
Amazing. That is so relatable. So I've had all these executive roles in the past. It's absolutely true. It is so lonely at the top. Like there are some things that you have to hold inside of you and you can't share openly because you're expected to behave a certain way as a leader. And so about 10 years ago, I really started investing in communities to surround myself with peers. It's, it was a game changer for me in my career and realizing that, oh, I'm not alone. Like, that there were other people who feel this way and, and can lend some support and advice.
Yeah.
But the challenge that I've always had was sort of the structure. It's like, I meet some amazing folks at events, but then how do I continue to build that relationship? And so why a couple of years ago, I was introduced to Sidebar, fell in love with Sidebar, and then pulled, I think, all of you into Sidebar with me. So yeah. Okay, so let's shift gears and talk a little bit about pivotal career moments. So it could be a promotion, a transition, a setback. I would love to hear how you navigated it, and did peers help along the way. So maybe Akshaya, I'll go back to you and see if you have any thoughts.
Sure. Very top of mind, huh? Because again, as I just shared as I was introducing myself, I was transitioning back into the Bay Area after being out of the States for over, I think almost a decade actually. So I was back home in Canada. I moved back and it was a pretty significant inflection. Again, like what brought me back here was my husband was building his own thing. So we decided, again, we both live by the rule, we regret nothing, and I'm happy to talk to you about that. And so we were like, yeah, let's up and move and let's kind of move through. I was honestly loving my role at the venture studio that I was talking to you guys about. I mean, it was literally a dream job. I mean, I got to wake up every morning, solve big problems. We had the capital to go solve it, and we got to build new businesses ground up, right? Like, that's a dream job. I got to do it all. But then this transition, again, the challenges of being like, investing, having a family and figuring out where you want to do and the bigger things other than professional life actually was transitioning back into the Bay Area. And I have to be honest, I was very afraid because I was like, wait, am I just leaving my dream job? I mean, these opportunities don't come often. So what does that mean in terms of my own career growth, the amount of businesses I want to build, and all of those things? And don't get me wrong, I'm super ambitious and I will not back down. And so I was like, this transition is actually going to be detrimental to me, right? And that was I had fear. I had fear as I was going into this transition. And then, as always, because my wonderful group, we meet every 2 weeks for about an hour and a half. I got on and I was talking all about this, like this move and everything. And I remember someone asked me, "It's like, I think you're afraid." And believe me, they got this from a Zoom call. And I was like, I am afraid. I feel like I'm giving up so much. And then they really pushed on getting to the core of what I was feeling, who I am, and what else I could possibly do if I embrace this transition. And I mean, here I am in the Bay Area, and I feel like my community has completely exploded, which I am so thankful for. And I've met these incredible women over so much more. And then I'm actively working with so many different startups and have got my board roles. And like, it's been fascinating. So just kind of navigating that transition, what felt like fear, I felt like I was able to navigate it with like conviction, confidence in many ways, and then also like I had to be vulnerable, right? Every couple weeks I will second guess myself, but again, I regret nothing. I'm so happy, and I was able to transition and embrace the change that kind of happened for me.
Thank you. And first of all, selfishly, I am so happy that you moved to the Bay Area so that we can hang out and have meals together. And I know you and I are collaborating together on designing the Sidebar Summit, April 23rd, 24th, and it's going to be amazing. And maybe I'll pull you into helping design the Women in Product Conference in September too. So that would be fun.
It would be my pleasure.
So we're so thrilled that you're here. And Sue, I know you also had some thoughts around this topic.
Yeah.
Career transitions and inflection points.
Yeah, I was thinking of two instances where this happened and how I kind of leaned on both the women in my peer group or just my peer group, right? One, I'll talk about the first one. So I've been in the startup space, so it's, just first-time founders, really motivated to make an impact, not really thinking about revenue or not focused on EBITDA growth. And then I moved to a company that was a PE-backed firm, and they brought in a CEO who was very focused on just the numbers. And he said, you guys take care of impact and all of that. But it was a difficult transition to make. And I think my natural instinct was, fight or flight. I was like, what am I going to do? Like, I have to stand up for this. This is wrong. Or I'm like, it's not my problem. I'm leaving. But my peer group really, really helped me manage that situation really well. They reframed the whole problem for me, and they came from so many different perspectives. They asked me these really hard questions about very similar to what you said, Akshaya, which is, are you nervous to do this because you've never done it? Or are you not confident about what you're bringing to the table? But the best one was, I think there's this lesson, or I don't know what it's called, but it's skipping my mind right now. But it was about negotiation. And it's about speaking to, say, different functional leaders in a language they would understand. So they asked me to frame the question in a way that the CFO would get it, that the CEO would get it. And it wasn't about product roadmap, strategy, vision. It was about these numbers, this is our growth percentage and whatnot. It just felt like common sense. But it wouldn't have come to me because I was in the thick of it and I was feeling so stressed about being in that situation. So having other people who knew the context of where I was coming from and who had the experience of dealing something like this really helped me navigate that situation. So I got, I wouldn't say got out of it, but I navigated it a lot better than I would have if I didn't have that support system. So that's absolutely helpful. And I'd stayed with the same peer group within Sidebar for over a year. So they knew everything that I'd been through, they knew my experiences, and they called out some of the things I'd said a year ago. And they said, this is where you want it to be. So don't leave, like, don't go. This meant so much to you. And all of that really was helpful.
Blast their ass because
Okay.
So that was, I think that's one story that comes to mind. There's another about being a product leader and then going into a co-founder.
Oh, I think you're on mute now, Sue.
Sorry, I think someone maybe did a blanket mute. Yeah, I was saying the other one was more about going from being a product leader to a co-founder and then starting to miss being a product leader because you can't just be that and you have to play so many roles. And my peer group's really helping me navigate that as well. And to all the women out there who are women founders, I hear you, I get you. It's not easy. But there are many of us, so definitely reach out. If you see someone you are inspired by or want to understand what their journey is, reach out because you'll learn a thing or two.
Thank you for sharing. There was a couple things that you said that really hit home for me. So number one is just being with the same group of people who have gotten to know you really, really well over time, right? So it's like, it's not just meeting somebody at a community event and then maybe grabbing coffee with them. It's like, how do you, get to know a group of people who can then be honest with you and, and tell you because they know you so well to get out of your own head or hey, this is what you said that you wanted and this is happening now and why aren't you going after it? I love that. And then the other thing that you said is just also surrounding yourself with folks who are outside of product too, because you can learn so much from your finance peers, your sales peers, your marketing peers, but sometimes you might not always be able to talk to those same leaders within the company and to have that network outside of your company to lean on is great. Okay, one more question before I open it up to the audience. And I'm going to ask Sandy, you this question, which is about avoiding career stagnation and staying ahead. So, sometimes, you get to a certain point in your career as a VP of product or CPO and where you feel like, okay, is that it for me? Maybe I've hit a career plateau. I'm curious what practices or habits you've used to stay ahead, to learn, to grow in your leadership, and has a peer community contributed to your learning and growth?
Yeah, absolutely. So I personally learn best by observing and seeing something be modeled, more so than, going to looking at strategy frameworks or learning in different styles. So that's how I am personally. And for many years, of course, I'm looking up to mentors for that learning. And then as I move up, they're just kind of less and less mentors. But I also know that there are plenty of, in these organizations like Women in Product and Sidebar, there are other amazing VPs that have different superpowers that I can learn from because, I have a set of superpowers. Everyone has their own set of superpowers. So I've kind of sought out these other folks of superpowers that I want to get better at. So on the job, for example, in one of my jobs, I was managing BI engineers for the first time, and I had never done that before. I'd been managing product and program, but not BI engineers. So I sought a VP, and this goes back to just being outside of the function too. Another leader in BI, and got his thoughts and his advice on managing the BI team. I've done that where I've sought other peers. I had a peer who had a superpower of like negotiation, and I saw it in meetings. Like, please, let's talk about this, because this is clearly something you're very good at. And negotiation is a part of all of our jobs, and getting better at that is always a good thing. So I've done that. And then I think in one of my roles, I was also playing more of a GM hat as well. And so that was fairly new to me at the time, and seeking out people who are in finance, like was mentioned earlier. So that's what I've done on the job. And then in terms of the communities, Sidebar. So now I am enjoying, this is my first time really stepping away from corporate, and I'm enjoying my solopreneur portfolio career life at the moment, where I'm advising startups and coaching product leaders. And I can tell you, there are plenty of people in Sidebar that are doing that, and it can be lonely, right? As a solopreneur, I'm sitting at home and on my laptop, and having a community to just bounce ideas off of, right? Even things like tax strategies now as a solopreneur, like, what do I need to think about? And advisory contracts, like these very, very tactical things that I don't have to figure out on my own. I have plenty of people I can talk to that are really happy and willing to share, right? And then I have the reverse of people who are wanting to advance into leadership, and they're asking me. So there's a lot of exchange of information with a group of people that are just really happy and willing to help. And on the women of product side, like recently, I went to a dinner with 15 very senior women, and was about being on a board, which is a black box in general, but for women on boards, it's an even bigger black box. So we had women who were on public boards, including Deb Liu, that you mentioned earlier, who graciously invited a group of us, and shared, and I learned a lot. I mean, I learned, I always thought that, okay, the biggest thing is to get on a board, kind of like a resume, like you get on a board and you'll be asked to do more boards. And the feedback I got was, no, it's not just any board. You have to be really passionate because of how much time commitment it takes, right? And also like the location. Do you want to be traveling I'm in the West Coast, be traveling to New York, that often for the board meeting? So things that I hadn't considered before that would probably take me a while to figure out on my own. And I don't have to. I feel like I can shortcut that with people who are willing to help out. So that's been great.
It's funny, I was at Deb's house last weekend with a couple of other male Sidebar leaders who were looking to get on the board. So I was like, okay, let's all get together with Deb and she can reveal her secrets. But I loved how brutally honest she was. She was like, well, you look like every other candidate that is being a male Indian, CTO, like you're not differentiated. In this case, being a woman might help a little bit. So, okay, I'm going to open it up to audience questions. We're going to probably don't have a lot of time. So we're going to take 2 or 3 questions from the audience, and then we're going to move into our Sidebar problem solving session. So, Rachel and Mia, I can't really see the chat. Were there any questions in the chat that looked interesting that we should make sure that gets asked? Or what we can do is
no questions in the chat.
So if you have a question, why don't you pop off of mute and then ask your question to panelists, and we might have time for 2 or 3.
Come on, everyone. Don't be so shy.
Hi. Yeah, I have a question. So I'm actually considering joining a company in a GM role instead of a typical product role. My name is Sadaf, by the way. So the question that I have is how do I think about like what it's a small business, so it's a relatively early stage startup that still has some challenges, and I can see that. But in terms of joining this company, like what are the green flags and the red flags that I should look out for in a GM role?
Sandy, do you want to take that one?
So your question is looking at this opportunity GM and what you should look out for. You know, I think I would sort of take a step back um, and understand sort of as a, you know, because the GM and you said you typically do product,
Yes, that's correct.
right? So there are slight differences. You have the like P&L responsibility there. So I think, you know, perhaps if you are well versed in more of like the PM questions that you typically would do in an interview is like on the general management question and how decisions are made at the company. And it really ultimately is like up to you in terms of like how you feel about, like, is part of your question whether you want to go into GM or have you already made that decision?
No, I'd love to go into a GM role, but I think it's more in terms of specifically this company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, when I read the balance sheet and I was slightly concerned.
Right.
But I guess what I'm trying
Okay.
to understand is what are sort of the green flags and the red flags I should look out for, and just understand, or what kind of questions can I ask more so at a management level before I think about accepting an offer. Yeah, so that's really my question.
Yeah, and I think it depends on like what are the things like you care about most, right? Like is it sort of like the talent of the people there? You said you were a little bit alarmed with looking at the numbers, so that's that's certainly a red flag that you can go and dig in deep into, right? Like the stability of the company. And granted, like, you know, we all care about stability of the company, but we might be in different parts of our lives where like we really need a stable company, or like I can take a little bit more risk. So it depends on your exact, you know, situation. But I'm always a big fan of like sort of intuitively, you know, as you've been talking to that company, what are the things that people are saying? Like look at the themes as you interview and talk to the company. What are the themes that are highlighting, like good and bad? Because they're very illustrative in terms of gathering like just general sentiment. So I don't know if Akshay or Sue, you have other thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, I think so Sandy, I agree with you, right? Ultimately, this is your decision to make. But some of the tactics that I would say that would be valuable is if you have an offer, I would reverse interview them, right? Like reverse interview, talk to the CFO, get into the details of all the flags that you've kind of experienced through the process that Sandy just highlighted for you to gain confidence or more information for you to be able to make that decision. So definitely reverse interview. I think it's a very underused tactic. And then the other piece is, as you go through that process, all the challenges that they have, are those your strengths? And can you actually go have an impact on filling that and turning around that, right? And if you feel like you do, and the path is hard, just my opinion, not advice, do it. If it's hard, do it. Like you'll definitely learn something and you'll thank yourself. So
I'll
just practical
I-
advice.
I'll add, you know, because I was COO GM of my last company, and always happy to chat. So feel free to reach out. And we could talk through some of the challenges or flags that you're seeing. But I would say, are you mission and values aligned with the CEO and the rest of the executive leadership team? This is so critical, given the role that you'll be playing. I would also chat with the board. I mean, at this role, for this role, there's no reason why you can't get in front of the board and ask them those questions, which is, what are you seeing in this company? What are, you know, what makes you excited about this company? What are some of the challenges or concerns that you have? How can I positively impact that? So, so those are just some ideas, but I'm sure if you reached out to any of us, we can provide our perspective. Okay, I lied. I don't think we can get through 2 or 3 questions.
Thank you.
I'm gonna move into the problem solving session, and you could have actually been in the hot seat because this would have been a really, really interesting problem to deep dive into. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna spotlight one of Sidebar's facilitators, Lauren English, and she is going. Hi, Lauren. So good to see you.
Hi, everyone.
She is going to move us through a problem-solving session. Sidebar has a methodology that Lauren is going to share. The panelists are going to stay to help Maggie solve her problem, and we're going to also bring on a few other participants from the audience today to also participate in the problem-solving session. So I'm going to get them spotlighted as Lauren shares the methodology. And then just one last thing before I forget, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about Women in Product or Sidebar, Brennan from the Sidebar team, as well as Mia and Rachel from the Sidebar team are happy to stay on at the top of the hour to answer any questions that you might have. So, okay, so Lauren, take it away.
Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. Yay. I love this conversation. I love these powerful women. And also Sandy is in my group that I facilitate at Sidebar, so I'm particularly biased. And I would just say excellent work. Yes. Yeah, I'm going to take us through something that is really a core pillar of what we do at Sidebar. We're not going to be able to give it the sort of time and depth that we would if you were a member, but hopefully you'll get a little bit of a brush stroke. So I'm going to share something with you. None of it's rocket science. It's stuff that you already know. It's just that we do it in a specific combination. So I'm going to post in chat. Oopsie, here I go. In just a moment, the 5 steps of our process. The first step of the process is to share a problem. So we've got Maggie teed up in a moment. She's going to share a problem. The second step is for us, I would say 1.5 step is for everyone to lean in extra hard, because we're going to call on someone to restate what they heard. And the reason we do this is for alignment, just to make sure that we're actually hearing what Maggie is saying. The third step is we call coaching. Now, I'm sure you're all great coaches. PMs are great coaches. I know the 3 of you on the call are great coaches. But Sandy, I'm going to ask you, at Sidebar, when we say coaching, we mean something really specific. Would you say what we mean at Sidebar when we say coaching?
Yeah, I mean, when we're coaching, right, we're also asking questions. It's not necessarily jumping to something specific. It's asking questions and helping that person think through and discover things through that process.
Beautifully said. I would also argue that was bottom line, which is another phrase that we use at Sidebar, which means to be concise. So after that coaching has happened, that's when we move to advisement. This is the hardest step for people, especially brilliant people, of which I'm sure you all are. Really want to make sure that the questions that you ask don't have your own agenda and advice baked into them. So purely questions for clarity or for helping, in this case, Maggie, dig a little bit deeper. So advisement, we're good at that. We solve problems. I'll just say that advisement can also mean solidarity. I'd love to see that in chat too. Like, I so feel this, right? That was Q1 for me last year, and it's going to turn around, I promise. So solidarity can also be housed under advisement. And then lastly, we'll come back to Maggie and ask for insights. What did you learn from this short ideation? And is there a next step and an action? And I'll just say this is what Sidebar does so brilliantly with our peer-to-peer teams, is that once Maggie has said something, then she's got all of us, all 72 of us, or however many there are, to hold her accountable. And we'll say, great, Maggie, in 2 weeks, can you come back and give us a report on how that went? So we won't get to do that formally today, but I see magic happen again and again in Sidebar with this methodology. So I'm posting in chat, if it's helpful, just a visual of the process that I just outlined. So I'm going to ask Maggie, and I'm going to ask her to tell us where it hurts in about 90 seconds, right? We don't want the world of context, but enough for us to get a sense of how we might be able to help. So Maggie, come off mute, tell us where it hurts.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice to meet you all. So I'm a product manager at a small innovation company, a small innovation team within a large Fortune 100 company. And we're unique. We wear multiple hats. And my challenge is prioritization of work where there are competing demands across engineering, product, and UX design. And I sometimes struggle with knowing what is critical for me to complete this week when there are multiple ongoing efforts and cross-functional team members who are constantly pinging me in Slack. So we have a bunch of different communication channels, and Slack is our primary one among many meetings throughout the day and throughout the week. And just to add a little bit more context to wrap it up, I've tried a couple of methods of being transparent with my stakeholders and my manager about these multiple competing demands on my plate each day, but I feel like I'm not really seeing any return. And it can feel pretty lonely to constantly feel underwater and not have clarity about when I can lean on others, whereas other times I'm sort of directed to sort of, complete it all and figure it all out myself. And I've also been leveraging a couple of new project management templates that have been working really well, but I think that the challenge still stands that there's that constant push and pull from my cross-functional peers each day in Slack and in meetings, and understanding what is more critical to complete has been my challenge.
Thank you so much, Maggie. I thought that was very clear, but I just want to check for alignment from the group. Let's see. Anne-Marie, could I ask you to come off mute and just reflect back what you heard? What did you hear that Maggie lifted up for us to look at together? Anne-Marie, you able to come off mute?
Yes, I'm so sorry. I was multitasking.
You're allowed
someone
to.
else?
Yeah, I sure can. How about Michelle? Michelle, is it Levitt?
Yes.
What did you hear?
Yeah, so I hear a tactical challenge that you're having with managing a high volume of communication, and a communication or a prioritization alignment challenge that you're having with your leadership about what the expectations are for your role in managing those channels, and what support you can and should be leveraging to help yourself or not, depending on your leadership's expectations. Does that kind of cover the challenges that you're feeling, or did I miss some of the nuance, the specifics?
I think you covered it.
Yeah, and really nice way to check in at the end of that, Michelle. That was beautiful. So it feels like we're aligned. Let's go to questions. Coaching questions without agenda. And you can raise your digital hand if you have one. If you have a question with Maggie, like, I hear the situation, I hear the ouch, I hear the ick, but I need more information before I can give you feedback or advice. What questions might you have?
I don't have a digital hand, so apologies.
Okay.
People who might, and if I'm speaking over you. The question I have for you, Maggie, is as a company, you said it's a Fortune 100 company.
Yeah.
So I suppose you guys have KPIs at the leadership level. Do you have well-written KPIs, and is that something the organization follows to track progress?
Yes, we have KPIs at our organizational level. We follow them day to day at our team level because we manage multiple platforms digitally, and we're focusing on those KPIs.
And the KPIs are ranked, or these are our KPIs?
They're somewhat ranked. We have a couple that we feel are pretty much on the same level, and then there are other ones that we'll talk about conversationally but aren't as higher ranking as others.
Okay, thanks.
I'm seeing some hands. Let's go to Akshaya.
Maggie, you talked about that you started trying some strategies and some were working and some were not. Can you elaborate a little bit more about exactly what's not working after you tried those tactics?
Absolutely. So one example is the way I've probably in project meetings, I've just like every product manager have multiple projects and features that I'm working on. So if I'm aligned to UX leads, UX designer leads in one feature, I might explain just conversationally via Slack or in a meeting. I'm not able to get to that quite yet, or if they're trying to set up an hour-long meeting with me that day to touch base or have a sync, I might say, hey, I'm working on something else, but I'm more than happy to prioritize this with you later in the week if you want to set up another meeting, maybe 30 minutes, just because there's about 6 other meetings that day just to start. I think that the way they've received it, I wonder if they receive it as like complaining, or maybe as something that's like, I'm too busy for you. That's just an assumption of my own. But I think that I don't really get like I think because of the ongoing constant trying to sync with me throughout the day and throughout the week, I don't know if they're receiving it the way that I intend for them to receive it. And one other example might be when in my one-on-ones with my manager every week, who is kind of the leader of the product leads. But she also is very close to all of our work and all of our features, so she understands like how much is on our plate. I will explain in my one-on-ones, I have a list of the things that are kind of what I see as critical for me to hash out with her that week. And the 30 minutes is never long enough, but in 30 minutes, I try to get through most, if not all of them. But the list is not exhaustive. There's a bunch of other things that kind of can come up that are not my critical priorities for that week. But in Slack, a developer might reach out to me to ask me to review stories for a feature that wasn't even on my one-on list with my manager.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's definitely upstream strategic work that I work on for multiple features and projects, but then there's also downstream efforts that happen with work that aren't technically my priorities for that week that have to be reviewed in order to get the work out there.
Great, Maggie, and great question. Does everyone feel that impulse right now to solve the problem? Can everyone feel it? Okay, that's the muscle that we are looking to inhibit. We're going to inhibit for 2 more questions. Is it Shweta?
Yeah, you got it right. And I'm sorry for the background noise. I'm traveling and just trying to like find some place where I can chime in. Quick question, like I think someone had already asked, but for the prioritizations, do you guys have a goal or milestone? Like, do you want to focus on the revenue growth, or is it more of expanding the customers? And I'm also trying to understand, like, are the product teams not aligned? Because if it's you're working in one segment, definitely as you're changing your priorities, can all the product managers in your org come together and discuss like, hey, for this year, can we discuss like what area you're focusing would? So do you have any, I don't know, like a pre-year meeting, like a planning meeting with all the PMs where you guys don't have to struggle down the line? I mean, there'll be changes, but like not too drastic changes along the lines.
Okay. Super hard to hear you, but I think we got some of it. I just want to just note that there was a little bit of a suggestion baked in there, just a little spice of suggestion. Again, like nothing wrong with that. That's why you're brilliant. But we want to be careful to stay in the boat that we're in. Maggie, do you want to answer that question?
I'm happy to try. So I think there are 2 parts of that, Shweta, if I'm articulating this well enough. So the first one is kind of how do we assess our KPIs, if that's correct. And then the second part is how do the product managers come together and assess what our priorities are, maybe for the year-long roadmap or something like that. Did I get that right?
I think that's right. And maybe what you can do, if you can pick to respond to one of them, just in the interest of time, and then we'll go to Sandy for a final question.
Sure. Yeah, that latter part I can definitely resonates. I think also because we might have talked a little bit about KPIs, but we can allude to more later too. The last part of that, great question. My team gets together at the end of the year to prioritize our roadmap for the following year. And I think because we're so underwater in Q4, like a lot of teams, it's hard to sort of figure out like what are those priorities for the next year, especially because work always changes. So yes, other product managers, my 2 team members and my manager, we all get together and we kind of assess like what are the priorities for the following year. And we stick to kind of our quarterly or PI epics that were planned. Sometimes they shift. But for the most part, I think that the year has not been so off kilter from what we had planned the year prior. But I think that maybe the discussion around, I don't want a solution. Sorry, I'll pause there.
It's okay if you start to feel a solution within yourself. Like I kind of want to just pause before we go to the final question. Like, are you experiencing any insight just from being asked these questions? Is something opening up a little bit for you, Maggie? You don't have to tell us what it is, but just is it?
A little bit, yep.
Yeah. Just want to highlight the power of asking questions, right? Really, really can be quite powerful. Okay, Sandy, final question to you.
Okay. I am curious whether you mentioned the different cross-functional stakeholders, and in terms of the product strategy, the roadmap, the KPIs, do you share the same ones, or are your functional stakeholders rolling up to entirely different ones? And then how much of those goals and KPIs overlap?
Yeah, great question. So this is all the struggles here are kind of all internal to my team. So the UX designers and the engineers and product all share the same KPIs as it relates to our features. I can try to make this a little real with some real examples. So on our digital platforms, subscription, so like a user creating a profile or subscribing to our newsletter, that's our top KPI. And also a top KPI is action. How many times is a user actually clicking on our content and taking an action on a task? So those are the two things that we talk about constantly, cross-functionally within my innovation team of product management. So yeah, I think that hopefully that answers your question. I could go on, but I'll stop there.
Thank you.
Cool.
Nice, Maggie, you're so good at sort of self-regulating in terms of how much content you're going to give. And again, we would spend much more time on this would we were in group, which I wish that we were, because what a smart group it would be. Okay, so now we've arrived at advisement. I'd love to get some advisement from people and also flex that bottom lining muscle. Like, don't fix it all in a dissertation. Like, what's something you can offer that's a perspective shift or something tactical she can try? Let's stay with the group that's spotlit for now. What are y'all thinking? Got some advice? Sue.
I found the button. I was flexing it.
Yay.
Maggie, it's a little bit of a follow-up question, but also advisement is I'm sensing a process issue, but also a personnel issue. Not personnel, maybe process and communication. I'm curious if you feel like you're being supported enough by your manager and the supporting functions to be able to do your role better. What's your opinion on that?
I'm taking some notes as you talk. Great, great question. I think that really hits home to how I've probably been feeling for the past year and a half. I think the resources, their understanding of what's on product managers' plates, it might be misaligned with what the expectations are of my manager, of the product managers. I think the teams have probably felt a little bit. We had a retro this week across engineering and UX designers and product. And a couple of different people, including a developer, mentioned that we have too much on our plate right now. And I was like, whoa, I didn't know other people were drowning too. And I think that the way my manager handled it was kind of like how she's handled it with me in the past when I mentioned this last year was, the work is not going to stop. Thank you for telling me, sort of thing. So I sense that there's probably something coming from above that I don't think that people at my level have a lot of insight into. I think sometimes there's a little bit of a gap in understanding how all the work comes to our plate and like what the leadership level is expecting in terms of the amount of work. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, and I think it, gave me more clarity about your situation as well. And I hope it did for you when you were speaking about it. I clearly the answer is you guys are not the problem. There's something else that's contributing to it, and hopefully you'll be able to address that.
Great.
Yeah, thank you.
So in the interest of time, right, here's where the gold is. And I want to make sure that, Maggie, you get it from everyone, even if we don't get it in this call. Stick around. If you have to hop, but stick around. We're going to talk to Brennan, my colleague and friend, in a moment more about Sidebar. We have time for one more quick piece of advice. Can you make it quick?
Yes, I can go really quickly.
Do it, Akshaya. Bottom line.
Yes, I completely agree with Sue. I think you have a lot of reflection to do, but also think about what are the avenues that you have control over, right? So because you mentioned that there are other disciplines who are in the exact same board, maybe you can start thinking about how to organize your work as red work and blue work. I don't know if you've seen that concept. It's a very powerful concept where you're all planning together, is like strategy, thinking, systems, evaluating things, long-term goals together, engineering, product design, UX, and then you move into red work. So everyone's moving into execution versus you're all doing different things at different points in time. So it's a great tactic regardless, and hopefully that gives you some support in the interim.
Yeah, thank you for that. That sounds like a really valuable tool. Look up.
So now's the time when I would go for insights, and we kind of spot check on that earlier for you, Maggie, but I just want to ask, like, let's have a meta moment. What's it like to have this circle of people here, this brilliant circle of women to discuss this with? What's the feeling?
Is that a question for me, Lauren?
It is.
Okay. I feel really supported. I mean, I have like 48 strangers on the call here who are showing a lot of empathy, and I sense that some folks are maybe feeling similar struggles. But the insights that are coming up are some things I've been in the back of my mind for the last year and a half, and I think it definitely hits home to like how insightful some of the responses have been. So thank you.
Thank you for your willingness and your vulnerability, and for everyone. I hope that you can all see and feel how we could shift very easily to creating a roadmap of action for which we could hold Maggie and help keep her accountable. We don't have time to do that today. I'm going to pass back to Ha, but I also want to share my email in chat if you have any questions, you want to talk about this or Sidebar. I love talking about those things. Ha, back over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us. Hopefully you got 2-3 pieces of wisdom from today's call. Sandy, Akshaya, Sue, you are incredible. I've learned so much from you over the last 2 years being in Sidebar. You are my heroes, and I'm so grateful for your wisdom, your partnership, everything. For folks who have to drop off, no worries. But if you're interested in learning about how you can build your personal board of directors, and especially through Sidebar and Women in Product, Brennan has agreed to stay on the line. Rachel, I don't know if you're able to stay on as well. Happy to answer any questions that folks might have. But with that, we're going to close off this session, and stay on if you have questions and you want to have Brennan and Rachel answer them. I'll also be able to stay on as well. But thank you, Lauren, for facilitating as well. And you're amazing as always. And I look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks in person, facilitating an in-person Sidebar dinner. So look forward to it.
Thank you so much, everyone. Such a pleasure seeing you all. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm going to unspotlight us and then just get everybody. Oops. Let me unspotlight. And I spotlight myself.
Hi, Brennan.
Hey, Lauren. That was
Great to see you.
Great to see you too.
What's the good word? Here we are.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry, am I echoing for everybody, or is
Yes,
that?
you are a little bit.
Oh.
Any questions? Go ahead and, Brennan, why don't you go on mute? Okay, so any questions for Rachel, for Mia, for myself, for Brennan? Feel free to get off of mute if you do.
I feel like I'm cheating because I've already decided I'm going to apply to Sidebar before this, but now I'm like doubling down on this. And Brennan, I already have a 15-minute check-in with you later today. We probably could cancel that if I already get my questions answered here anyway. I had more questions around like onboarding, because it seems like you guys take a lot of great care to making sure that you've been put together with a really good peer network, and especially if you're sharing like very similar challenges. And mine's a lot about job hunting, but a bit of career transitioning, because I'm currently working at an energy company, and I think that kind of makes my candidacy look a lot less attractive for the type of tech roles that I'm aiming for. But that's a very short-term situation. And in the long run, it will definitely have more, generic, I guess, product management and leadership questions to ask. But I guess what are things that help to ensure that you are getting onboarded and set up with the right group that can help you with whatever problem that you're personally tackling, and also being able to contribute to that community? Like, I guess just more questions about your onboarding process and how you match people.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I was looking forward to our call, so happy to jump in and tackle things here. So the sidebar matching process is really important to just collect the right amount of information ahead of time. So just we have application surveys and matching surveys. We get meeting time preferences. We have you build out your profile effectively when you onboard. I like to have a conversation with people to add any additional context and notes that I can provide to the matching team. So we have this well-balanced profile about you to align. I like to think of it as like the big rocks in the stream of your career, like right now. Like what are you facing right now in terms of what's your professional stage, but also what are the biggest challenges you want support with? And so then we work with the matching team to find the right connection of 8 to 10 other peers that aligns with. And then making sure that we're working with facilitation team like Lauren to make sure you're delivering this experience that is helping you make progress in that space. And then if those challenges evolve, like I think Sandy mentioned, she transitioned into a more of like a solopreneur or board position role. And so the challenges she faced might change. So being really aware of how that adapts in people's career, like change is a feature of these types of group developments, not a bug. So yeah, just being aware of that and making sure that we're keeping you in a space to drive impact in an ongoing capacity.
That's amazing. Really appreciate it. Thanks. I can
Absolutely.
cancel our 4 p.m. if you like. All good.
Great. Yeah, is there any other questions? Any other questions I can help with? So yeah, we've got so what I want to do is I'm going to drop like a link. I've done it already in the chat. That'll be a link to my personal Calendly. This will be just kind of made for this event for anybody who wants to join and grab 15 minutes and chat. We're also, I'll mention the amazing Sidebar Summit that we're putting on. So if you decide to join Sidebar from this event and come from there, you'll get a ticket to that event included in your Sidebar membership. So that's just something to consider if that's something you want to explore.
Any questions about women in product or Sidebar? Happy to answer, and know that the team is here, and feel free to. Okay.
I just wanted to say thank you. I have been around product management for 25 years, but this is my first Women in Product event. And I already have Sidebar pulled up on my screen too. So just thank you for hosting. It was good, and I appreciate it.
Thanks, Stacy. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. So I love both organizations so much, and happy to stay connected and be a resource for you. So
yeah,
thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'm available as well. So thank you, Brennan, and thank you, Mia and Rachel, for staying on. But as I mentioned, I'm pretty open. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a message. If you have questions on women in product or questions on Sidebar, I would be happy to hop on a call and answer it for you. Rachel and Mia, Rachel, do you want to sort of share anything with women in product? Any announcements as well?
We recently launched our new community platform. We'd love to see you all there. I dropped a link earlier and I'll drop a link again. We'd definitely love to have you all come join us over there. And I know a sneak peek that we will be announcing more widely soon that we are back in person this year, since the first time since 2019. More details to come very, very, very soon. But I can say fall 2025 in the Bay Area. So we hope to, see you all there too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for everyone for joining, and have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.